Hey, Kandid how you doing on this Sunday, sensational Sunday? And I have got to wish all the fellas out there, all the men, we want to say happy Father's Day. I hope you felt celebrated on this day. And I know, a lot of fathers talk about it, how they feel as if their day is not celebrated to the level that Mother's Day is celebrated. But nonetheless, if you are a wonderful father and you doing your thing, I hope you are celebrating. I hope you feel loved. You are necessary. You are valuable to us in our community. And we just want to say we love you. All right. All right. Well, welcome to Kandid Conversations with Miss Krystal podcast. And this is going to be one of my last episodes for a couple of weeks. I've been running around doing a lot of things, and your girl needs a little bit of a break. And then, but coming up here soon, I'm going to be telling you guys what I've been working on behind the scenes. Miss Krystal has a new role. And so I'll be sharing with you more about that in the coming weeks. But right now, today, we are in for some good old conversation that is coming to you hot and unfiltered. If you've ever stopped mid-sentence after reading a social media post from today's guest and said, "Oh my goodness, I cannot believe he said that," you probably know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about none other than Mr. James McCAULEY. He is today's special guest, straight out of Louisville, now making waves in Atlanta. James went from local talent to major player, producing events for Live Nation, and also rubbing shoulders with icons like Jane Fonda and Larenz Tate. Y'all, Larenz Tate is still fine. All right. And he is also doing his thing. So he's slick with talk, heavy with truth, and always ready with a joke and a word. That's our boy Jigga. And he is joining us here today on Kandid Conversations. Can you guys show some love for Mr. James McCAULEY? Hey, James.
Hey, Krystal, how are you?
I am doing wonderful, and I absolutely love the name of today's conversations. It's the mouth, the myth. It's McCAULEY.
I like it.
Well, James, first off, welcome to the podcast. I know that we've been trying to do this thing for a while, but you keep us cracking up, and I have enjoyed watching your journey unfold as you are hopping from city to city, sharing your stories. But the thing is that woven in between your stories is always some slick truth that you always got to get to the people. So let's get right to it. What was life growing up in Louisville? You are born and bred in Louisville.
I am. First of all, thank you for having me, Krystal. Yes, we've been trying to make this happen, and you're busy, and I'm busy.
I know.
But thank you for continuing, to stay in touch and work to make this happen. And it's an honor to be on as your guest today. So thank you.
He's so sweet, y'all. And hey, you get a pass though with you hanging out with Larenz Tate and Jane Fonda, so you get a pass for that.
I get a little pass. I appreciate that. Growing up, it's so ironic that you asked me that question because I'm actually here. I'm in DC with my family this weekend. My uncle passed, my mom's oldest brother.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Last week, absolutely. So we all came to celebrate him. And who he's been to us in our lives.
Yes.
Even though we're going to miss him, and it was totally unexpected, and we were caught off guard. We're not sad, right? Because it was just such a amazing life. So we all wanted to come and celebrate him. So I said that to say it's ironic that you asked me that question because we've literally been outside in the penthouse balcony, whatever it is, talking about our childhood and growing up in Louisville, Kentucky, and we grew up in Beecher Terrace.
Wow. Yeah.
My grandmother had 10 kids.
Wow.
Yes, and then they all had kids and military background. So we were like all over the world, right? Even at an early age, going to spend summers with our families in the West Coast and in Massachusetts, and we were just everywhere. It was a blessing, right? We didn't have much. Like I said, we were and raised in the projects, but because my grandmother instilled unity and family over everything in her first 10 kids, it sprinkled down to us. So the dynamics of my family is very outrageous.
Well, we hear the stories. We love hearing your stories on social media, because one thing James gonna do, he gonna talk about his family.
I love my family more than anything, right? And that doesn't mean we're perfect. That doesn't even mean we always get along. That means the good, the bad, the ugly. I choose love, right? When it comes to my family.
Wow.
So we were just talking about growing up and just how we were like, people look at me and my personality now, they're like, oh, he'll pop off, or he says anything, or he has no filter, but that is my family.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Who shaped your point of view, and where do you get this mouth from?
It's all I've been around, right? From my grandparents to my mom to my siblings to my cousins to my aunts to my uncles, every generation. It's just, I think it was like we weren't like this bad. Let me see how can I put this safely.
You said safely. This is
no, you're right. It's raw. We coming raw. So yes. It was like we were not. My family growing up was not to be effed with, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that with my aunts, with my uncles, with my mom. Like, we walked through the neighborhood freely. We were just bold. There was just a boldness about us, right? We were loved. People loved us. People knew us. But the McCAULEYs, there was just a boldness, and you were taught jumping off the porch that you demand respect. Right, like you command respect. Like, they don't be out here, bothering people and picking on people, but don't let anyone disrespect you, right? But you also give respect, right? So that's why I'm so big on respect, because I'm intentional about being respectful. I'm intentional about being respectful, treating people how I want to be treated. So when that's stepped outside of, yes, I go to a whole
that whole other side comes out. But when did you realize that your mouth, your words were a brand all its own? When did you start letting it all hang out on social media? I kind of felt like, because I remember, James, the first time I met you, this was years ago at Bates Extravaganza, and you were helping with the stage, and off to the side, like you were just saying things, and you were cracking me up. I'm like, who is this guy? He is hilarious.
I remember that.
Hilarious. And then I can just remember, I think it was like maybe a few years later, all of a sudden I see you got this massive following, and you were just telling it like it is. How did this all unfold for you?
So I think a lot of it comes from my mom, right? Like, I watched her, like, that's how my mom was. She had no filter. I mean, at church, at work, at school, like, she was true to who she was, no matter what audience she was around, right? And my mother was a entrepreneur in her own right. She watched all the kids. We went to Corsh Taylor Elementary, which is right across the street from Beach and Terrace, right? So you had parents back then. Corsh Taylor was a really good school. It was one of the first Montessori schools in Kentucky. So it was a really good elementary school to, have your children in. So a lot of East End parents wanted their children to be at Corsh Taylor, but they were doctors, they were lawyers, they were
really,
and one I'm gonna mention, because I know he doesn't mind, Lamont Collins, right?
Lamont from Roots 101.
Yes. So we're talking back in the 80s. So Lamont Collins had children. Lamont lived in the East End of Louisville. He was just as, back then, Lamont was very vibrant in the community. He was always doing something, working. And, he didn't have a traditional schedule and I'm just using him for an example again, because I know he doesn't mind. but he didn't have a traditional schedule. You know, elementary school was what, 9 to 3 back then. And so the parent has to work from 8 to until 5. What do you do for that first hour? Because they can't go to school until 9. And what do you do for those second 2 hours? So my mom was the person in the community who went to the school, Course Taylor. It was like 20 kids. You know how they call the bus riders over the intercom? So that my mom had a group, Miss Curl's group. So it would be like 20, 30 kids, and, you know, and it would be Miss Curl's group, and she would pick them up. They gather them at the school, walk them over to Beecher Terrace, the projects, right?
Really?
And have activities for them, whether it be in our yard, at the community center. So it was also a sense that you had East End kids, such as like Lamont Collins kids, right, amongst others, who my mother did this for, you know, and they for a little bit of nothing, you know, cash, whatever, for something affordable, and also show them another part of
another side,
another side. You know what I mean? So then they were starting to gain friends in the projects, and you know what I mean? Like, so my mother was that dot connector. She was that person. She was that person who I saw give a lot while having little, right? And we never went without. We were never in need. We were never, you know, I mean, I'm sure she did struggle, but I never really saw it. So a lot of that was instilled for me, but I also saw her be her true self. Like, with pastor, we were members of Galilee growing up as kids, and like you never knew what was gonna fly out of her mouth, right? But she was also the person that was most reliable. She was that Sunday school teacher who caught the TART. We used to catch either a cab or the TART, the public transportation, to church at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, so we could be there by 9:30, so she could teach Sunday school at 9:45. Right?
Come on, Mama.
Yeah, she was the church treasurer she was the treasurer and the trustee. So she took money, you know, she was responsible without transportation now, right? She was still responsible for depositing the money into the bank, and to, you know, I saw her do all of that, but also be her true self, meaning cuss somebody out if she had to.
And then say hallelujah. But, you know, and that's, I just love hearing that. That's what I love so much about this platform. You get an opportunity to know the story behind the name. Yeah. And so you grew up in church, and you know, you are a true church boy. So James, though, how did you navigate, and when did you start saying, you know what, I'm just gonna be who I am on this social media thing, and I'm gonna tell it like it is. I don't care if the pastor's watching. Yeah. When did you make that decision, and how did it start? It just seemed to explode.
Yeah, and you wouldn't believe how many pastors, because I'm good friends with our associates with a lot of pastors, right? Because I used to sing as when I was younger too, so I moved and worked in a lot of these churches, or done ministry there before, or whatever. So I've, you know, had long-lasting relationships with a lot of pastors in the city. And you wouldn't believe, when I'm at home, I'm out, I'll run into them, and the first thing they say is, "Man, I love your social media. You a trip on social media. Man, I got to go to your social media for a laugh." And so I used to try to move carefully, right? Because I know I do have friends that are pastors and worship leaders, and, you know, so I used to try to move very careful, right? Or have this thought of, should I have said that? You know, I used to have those thoughts, but it was confirmed to me, right, through those conversations and those acknowledgments, like, man, we be waiting to see what you guys say, you know. So it's like, okay, it's a little edgy, but it's not, you know, disrespectful. You know what I mean?
So it gave you kind of permission to keep doing what you do, because a lot of people you're posting became their guilty pleasure.
Absolutely. and I wouldn't know that, right? Because they might not like the post necessarily. Right. They may not comment on the post necessarily. And I get their position, right? But they can tell you every post that I've made that month. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So,
That's hilarious, James.
Yeah,
That
and
is
I
so
just
hilarious.
believe and it's really who I am, Krystal.
Yeah.
It's not like my posts are not they're not premeditated. They're not it's little I could be sitting here and have a thought or something funny can happen or whatever, and I may think, oh, this is for a good post, right? And
So these
typically,
are like real life story scenarios. Something you posted, I think it's like a week or two ago, like your boss. And it's so funny because first off, I'm waiting for the TV show. It's always about your boss a lot of times. And so your boss texts you and says they want you to be at work at a certain time. And you was like, no, I got to drop my son off. And then people are like, this nigga ain't got no son.
Well, and here's the funny thing about it, Krystal. So like, that's why I'm so comfortable in who I am, right? Because the pastors know me and know what's up, right? So I ain't got to be doing no facade when I'm, in those spaces. My clients know me, so they know me, like they know me. I'll tell you this: one of my clients was in town. Two of my clients was in town actually. And, I introduced them to a few friends or whatever. And one of my friends says, which it didn't settle well with me, but one of my friends said to my clients, oh, y'all don't know James like we do, right? And so my clients were like, they told me this, right? Because they were like, they thought it was a little kind of shady too, right? Like, we as clients, you know what I mean? But it was like they could say that and feel like that was shady because they came right to me and said, guess what, such and such, and they were like, you don't know James like we do. And they was like, yes, the hell we do. Like,
so he gives it to us too, huh?
We absolutely know the James that y'all, because they know I can be 10, I can be 0. You know what I mean? And they
probably like you to turn it up because entertainment is the name of the game for you.
And they know what they're going to get, right? Like
absolutely.
They know what they're going to get. They don't have to figure out. Like my clients know 8:00 in the morning is early as hell for me. Don't schedule me for nothing. No meeting. I'm raw with them as well, right? But I get the job done.
There you go. Now, speaking of getting the job done and your clients, I also on your social media really enjoyed when you talked about how you were given an opportunity and it changed your life, allowing you to be in the spaces and places that you are right now. So talk a little bit about what you do and how this all came to be. I mean, rubbing elbows with the celebs.
So I was, I'm going to give you the quick version, the big version, and quickly. I never forget. It was 2012. I was just in a really depressing state, right? I was in a depressing state. I was, I was confused about where life was going for me, which direction.
Right.
Because I had degrees, right? At that point, I had a master's degree, but I had made so many mistakes off of me reactions and I just messed up, to where I was having some legal issues, as well.
And don't brush over this. I mean, I think a lot of times,
absolutely,
because people can probably are in the same situation now that you were then, and they're like, wow, if this could happen for him, it's possible for me. So talk about that.
I looked good, I looked like I had it all together, right? I looked like I had it all together. I was, still the hilarious James, making people laughing with my friends, all of that stuff. But I was in a very depressing state. I didn't know which direction life was going for me. At this point, I think I was probably about to start hitting 30. I'm in my late 20s. I'm seeing my friends. They're starting careers, starting families, and I just didn't know which direction life was going for me. And I was in a very depressing, suicidal state, actually.
Wow, James, growing up though, what did you aspire to do? What did you want to do?
I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to Central High School, Magnet Career Academy to become
Big
a
shout
lawyer.
out Central.
Big shout out to Central. Much love. I went there to get in the law magnet. When I signed up, it was too late, so I couldn't get in. The only thing that was open was the accounting magnet.
Yeah.
So all the kids, all my friends, all the people who were late as hell who didn't sign up for their magnets, pretty much they pushed us into this accounting magnet. Well, my mother didn't play. I had to go to school. I had to do, I couldn't bring home C's. I had to bring home as bad as I could have Krystal all A's and B's in academics. My whole conduct would be U's because I wasn't disrespectful, but I was there. I talked a lot. I did what I wanted to do. All that crazy stuff, right? So the teachers who couldn't handle me, they would give me U's and conduct. The other teachers that knew me and just knew, like, they didn't even care. They like, whatever. So I ended up in the accounting magnet. I did very well. I worked at the school bank, and that's how I ended up going to school to be an accountant.
Wow.
I am not in no shape, form, or fashion. Like, I do not have that personality of an accountant, right? But I ended up getting my accounting degree. I went to Kentucky State University. Then I went to Spalding, ended up getting my master's. And so that's how that happened. So 2012-13, I was depressed. I was suicidal. I never even believed in suicide until I was there myself, right?
Wow. So what was it for you that got you to that point? Did it just feel as if life wasn't unfolding the way?
Yes, correct. At this point, I saw my life, degree, career, married, kid, that's how I saw my life, kids. But none of that was happening. I had the degrees, but I didn't have the job. I had worked at GE. I ended up young, took a buyout from GE. I don't know if you remember 2008 when they were doing the whole buyouts and all that. I made a mistake. I ain't gonna say it's a mistake now, but back then I felt like, I made the mistake of taking the buyout with GE, thinking, I'll just get another job. Well, then we were in a recession. You remember? So it was hard to find work. So just my life, I was working like temp jobs and just like little in and out and in jobs. And I was like, God, I remember I was walking on on Chestnut, sorry. I had just dropped off my friend's car, Stephanie Ford. I'm not sure if you remember Stephanie. She used to live in Louisville in DC. Stephanie Ford, I had used her car. I didn't even have a car at this point. My car got totaled. I used Stephanie's car. She worked on 5th and Chestnut. I was working a security job at the Palace, making like $11, $12 an hour or something like that, with my own apartment, trying to buy a new car, And I was like, God, I can't do this no more. This was literally the conversation I was having as I was walking to the Palace in my black security shirt. And I just said, God, I can't do this no more. Like, I can't live like this no more. I want more. I want better. I can't do this no more. And God literally whispered to me, because that's how we talk to each other, and said, well, do better and work for it, right? And I literally told him everything I wanted. I was like, I want a job downtown with free parking. I literally called these things out with free parking. And that night, I'll never forget, it was the Anthony Hamilton show. And I was working security by their door. David, who was a white man, in his 50s, who's the general manager of the Palace. I didn't even know the Palace was connected to Live Nation. Live Nation owned the Palace.
Because I remember when Live Nation came to the city. I mean, it was a big deal. So
yes. So I didn't even know that at the time. Yes. So I walked in. So I'm working my station or whatever, and some guys from Anthony's band came out. And Krystal, I'm a church kid. I used to sing community choirs and recording artists, back with some background, traveled a lot, thanks to Titus and Nisi, Tommy Jones. So I knew some of these musicians, right? So they
because let's go ahead and let's go on and say it right now. The best musicians in the world, in the church.
Yes, absolutely.
All started out in the church.
Y'all got a lot of exposure through them, so they're coming out. They're like, James. They're like, what up? So David saw that moment, and David was like, he came back later and was like, now I'm a security guard. We're outsourced by the base. He don't know us. He don't. I didn't know this white man. Never seen him. Whatever. He was right there in that space at that moment, and he he saw that, and he came back and he said, you know them? You know, they know you. How you know? And I was like, you know, yeah, I used to sing. I was still singing at the time. And I was like, I sing, blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh, wow. He was like, what else you do? So I started having a conversation. I was like, I have an accounting degree, blah, blah, blah. And he says, I'm looking for an accountant. He said, my accountant is leaving the first of the year to go to work full-time at JCC as a professor.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm looking for an accountant. He was like, send me your resume. I was like, okay. So I sent him my resume. Weeks went by. They called me in for an interview. And I went in and interviewed. In that interview, David was showing me my office. He was like, this is where the office is and blah, blah, blah. You know, so I was like, oh, okay. So at that point, walking out of the palace that day, I felt like I had the job, right? Because like I said, he showed me the office, he showed me what I would be doing. He was saying he hadn't interviewed anybody else. So I felt like at that point I had the job. So I walked out and something hit me and I was like, well, when you apply, this, and this is going to come up on your record. You know, because I know I've been applying for jobs and that's why I haven't been.
And so you had, were they felony charges?
I was on a diversion program. So it was a misdemeanor charge at the time that could have turned into a felony, which it did end up turning into a felony.
And let's be honest, a lot of that is true, very true in our community. You've got all these skills, all these talents, but a lot of decisions that were perhaps made in the past was stopping you from being able to move forward and get a good job because people wouldn't take a chance on you.
And I didn't take seriously how the diversion program worked, right? So it worked where if you know, they would charge you as a misdemeanor, but if you didn't get in trouble, then they would dismiss it. And but I ended up getting in trouble on the diversion program. So I ended up becoming a felony. So I went I remember the time I smoked Black and Mounds, right? So I walked out of the building and I was like, oh man, I need to tell him about this record, right? About this charge, because I keep getting turned down from jobs. So I walked back in. I asked the front desk lady, I said, hey, is David, still around? And she was like, oh, he's actually in the back smoking. You can wait for him, right? So I said, no, I'm going to walk to the back. And I walked down 4th Street, walked to the back of the palace. I pulled out my Black and Mild. He was smoking a cigarette. And I said, I want to talk to you about something. He was like, what's up? He thought it was very crazy and weird that I walked to the back. And I said, I'm going to be honest. I said, I have this charge on my record, blah, 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 and I just wanted to let you know before it came back. He said, you know what? He said, man, that was so, what word did he use? He said, your integrity and your boldness, whatever. He was like, I already liked you from the interview. He was like, they just spoke so many volumes. He was like,
wow.
I do. He was like, I do want to hire you. He's like, was going back in to send your information to HR to move forward. He said, let me see what I can do. He said, I'm gonna talk to HR, let them know what's going on, send me the paperwork, let me see what I can do, and if they allow it, you're hired. And so it took a while, maybe about a month or so. But that whole process was part of what I needed too, right? Because I had to continue to trust. I told you I just had a conversation with God, right?
So well, first off, and we're going to go back to that because this is what I've been trying to tell people. The Bible says, write the vision and make it plain. A lot of times you don't have what you want because you're not specific or don't even realize what it is you want. But that night you told the Lord what you wanted, how you wanted. You was extremely specific.
The salary and everything. From the salary on.
Come on, yes.
And they ended up paying me more. So I went into that situation. So that process, like I said, I had to keep showing up as well too. Meaning I had to keep going to church. I had to keep serving. I had to keep singing. I had to keep, even though I was in that low place, that was a part of my process too, right? And that's when I really learned how to trust God, right? That's when God really talk about miracle signs and wonders. Like that's when I really was like, oh my God, like I've been in church all my life, we know the whole antics and all that, but that's when it was real for me, right? Like, wow, this is how God works. So yes, Krystal. So they ended up hiring me. I got in that position. It was like I went in as the accountant.
Yeah.
So low key, what people don't know is what Live Nation, you have all these. It's not just about concerts and whatever. It's all type of development to it and numbers and policy. You know, so you have to have a certain amount of urban shows, country shows. Like every region has to have yearly meet this goal of a certain amount of shows. Well, Louisville wasn't meeting that, right?
Yeah.
Because they were working with a promoter then, Gino from Indianapolis. But you know, it's still the number still wasn't coming in like it needed to. So Louisville wasn't doing that. They couldn't sell out shows. The problem they're having now, right? And I'm gonna circle back to that too. That wasn't happening. So I would be in the office as the accountant, but I would have to also sit in on these meetings and hear these stories and hear us not meeting quotas and blah blah. And I was like, so I got involved with promoting. So I was like, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to go through this radio station. We need to go. You have this, these promoters, Big Don and Jamie and Mike. You have Dream Team. You have 502, whoever the promoters were in that time, right? I'm like, we need to start reaching out to them. Let's pay them this and give them 6 tickets and ask them to social media was big at the time. So I started pulling in promoters, right? And then also doing the work on the ground myself. So when that happened, I'm still the accountant. I'm only getting paid to be the accountant, right? When that happened, though, the numbers started growing. And we started selling out shows, and more promoters started taking risks on bringing shows to Louisville. And, it just, and at the time, so now I can process this and I know what it was. But at the time, I'm doing it right, but I'm not even thinking that it's making this type of wave. And you probably remember this time. We talking 2013, 14. This is when Maxwell and Lettucey and the Palace was popping back then. So much so that they were like, let's do a House of Blues type thing and build the Mercury Ballroom.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So that's how that happened. So I was a part of that team as well when the Mercury Ballroom first got built. So a lot of my handprints and ideas. So I started making more money on the promotion end. So that's why I started Jigga Mac Entertainment, because they couldn't pay me under James McCAULEY, the accountant, because I was the accountant for Live Nation. But then I started doing promotion and marketing. They couldn't pay me as James McCAULEY because it was a conflict, right? So because I'm holding 2 positions and you can't do that. Live Nation is a major corporation.
Yeah.
So my boss sat down with me and was like, we got to figure out another way to do this. So I created Jigga Mac Entertainment.
And so that's where it was all birthed. But that story is so powerful because you had someone that took a chance on you and realized how important that your voice, your community's voices were at the table. And in the end, it ended up working out for them.
Yeah. And I rest in peace, David. He passed away a couple of years ago. But I will always pay homage to David because he took that risk on me, right? Not only did he take the risk on me, but he heard me at the table, right? Where I was the lowest one on the totem pole when I entered into those rooms, right? I'm just the accountant. So I was I was just there to do the numbers and make sure people were paid. But then when I started talking to David, presenting ideas one-on-one, he would call me to the table and allowed me. So at certain points, I'm running the room, like I'm running the meeting, right? Because my formula was working. You know what I mean? And at that time, again, we talking 10, 15 years ago. I didn't understand what was happening. And here's the thing, Krystal. I told you I wanted to be an attorney when I was a kid, and then it transitioned to an accountant. This entertainment shit, was never on my radar. Like I never said I want to be in entertainment. I want to meet celebrities. I want to move to Atlanta. None of that was ever on my radar. It never was. Never. Like I never wanted this for my life. I never desired it. It was never on my radar. So that's how I know that this was nothing but a move of God, right?
Ooh,
and how sometimes our will is not aligned with his will, but then what he has to do is put us in a place where we totally trust and depend on him, right? So that because I would have never allowed myself to like go to this place because I didn't see it.
You would never allow yourself to think that you could go to that space.
Absolutely.
It's giving me goosebumps because as I've been on my journey, and I said this doing this podcast has truly been my own masterclass, getting an opportunity to hear stories like yours. And they say all the time is that first off, are you asking big enough? We serve a big God. Yes. Are you asking on a level of what you think you can do?
Yes.
Or are you asking on a level on what you know that he can do?
Yeah. And I wasn't like, I just wanted to live in a high rise downtown Louisville.
Yeah, you would have been happy with that.
And you know what's crazy is I did that though. Like he allowed me to see that too, right? So that I can know, like, that ain't even what.
That ain't it. The eyes have not seen, ears have not heard.
So let me give this last thing. When I moved, when I started working in the Palace, I was living in Victory Park. One morning before I came to work, because it was my first apartment out of college. One morning when I came to work, I had a fight. I had to fight one of my neighbor's boyfriends because he would break the door. We had a security door. And that she would be cheating, whatever, they had their issues going on, and he would be trying to get in at night. He would break the door. I ended up getting robbed because some guys were waiting in the hallway when the door. So I was like, "You're jeopardizing my safety." Me and him had a big thing, and I beat his ass in the middle of 22nd Street in Victory Park. And then went back in the house, freshened up, and went to work. Right. So I didn't know. I ended up getting. While I had him on the ground, the girlfriend came and gave him like a 2x4. So once I got up, walked away, he came behind me and hit me with the 2x4 right in my ear. So I went in the house, freshened up, thought I was all together. I'm at work. My ear starts. We're in a meeting. My ear starts bleeding. Nobody knew I had just had a fight because I went, freshened up, and went to work. David came to me and was like, "What's wrong with your ear?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Your ear is bleeding." I'm like, "Oh shit," excuse me, my language. I'm like, "Oh crap." So later on, I go into his office and I tell him, I'm like, "Look, David," I'm like, "I had a fight before work. That's why my ears bleed, blah blah." He's like, "Oh, where do you live?" Because they didn't know my personal business, And he's like, "Where do you live?" So I'm telling him whatever. He's like, "Oh no, I can't afford not to have you at work." Because at this point, I'm making major decisions with the Palace and Mercury Ballroom. So David's like, "I can't afford not to have you work. You want to move." So I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I know the managers right behind the Palace. They were kind of new apartments, new condos at the time." He was like, "I'm gonna give her a call." Called up. I was not qualified. I wasn't making enough money.
Right.
And probably my credit didn't qualify either. But because of the relationship with David, they approved me. David ended up upping my salary to make my salary enough to be able to move into the apartment. And so I stayed there for a year before I moved into. Krystal, when I be on social media, giving God praise and just telling and speak like that's real for me.
That's real.
It's like, and no matter who, I don't care who I cussed out yesterday. I don't care who I cut off tomorrow. I don't care, what. I mean, I care what happens in between that, right? But I just never wanted to get confused with people. I'm always going to be a walking testimony and a walking billboard for God. Like, it don't matter what celebrities I work with. It don't matter what parties I go to. None of that. God in my life, God's first.
God's first, because you've seen him firsthand truly shift your life, take you from the brink, and now you're living your wildest dreams.
Absolutely.
So, you did Louisville for a little bit, then you got an opportunity to move to Atlanta. Talk about that and tell us, what you're doing now.
So Atlanta, I love Atlanta, right? It's so many just successful Black people in Atlanta. The cohesiveness, the collaboration, right? It's so much different from Louisville, from what and I say Louisville because that's where I'm from, right?
Right.
It's so different, and I desire it for my city so bad.
Yeah.
That's why I've tried to do different things in collaboration with people. That's why I'm very intentional about the people that I call and that I work with, because it's. I think one day we can break through and get to that point. I think we have a lot of work to do and a lot of egos to fall down, to fall or whatever, be put to the back. But I desire that because I see what can happen, right? I see the force that it can make when collaboration happens versus competition, right?
Ooh, I love that. Collaboration versus competition. So what
Yeah.
is your role now? And just talk about some of the, going to name drop for us now, some of the
Yeah.
people you're getting a chance to work with.
So now I am solely Jigamac Entertainment Consulting LLC, right?
Uh-huh.
So what Jigamac Entertainment is, it's a consulting firm. And what I do is I have everything that I've done, that I've had experience and training with, it falls under the umbrella of Jigamac Entertainment, right? So that means production management, that means tour management, that means artist management, artist development, event production, event planning,
Yeah.
so all of those things. So basically, I'm a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
You reach out to Jigamac Entertainment, my website, or social media via Instagram or Facebook, and you tell me your needs, and I pretty much consult in a way of telling you what you need, or I can be of service. This is how Jigamac Entertainment can be of service, right? So some of my clients that I worked with a lot of artists to this point.
Yeah.
I worked with at one point Usher's team,
Uh-huh.
Rihanna's team when I first got to Atlanta. Of course, gobs of shows people have called me in for, whether it be to be an artist handler or to help out with production. One of my biggest clients right now is GCAP and Jane Fonda.
Yes, and I got that picture right here.
Yes, that's a rising leader.
Looking good.
Jane looks amazing, right? You know
how old is she now? How old is she?
Give me a guess.
In this picture, she could pass for late 60s, 70s.
Jane's 87.
Wow.
People don't even know
Jane
is 87 years old. Yes. I love.
So what are you doing with Jane Fonda and Larenz? What is that project?
So that was the Rising Leaders Luncheon. So GCAP stands for Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Power and Potential. It's a nonprofit organization that was started by Jane Fonda 30 years ago when she was with Ted Turner and living in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it's a nonprofit organization that is youth-based, focused on STI prevention, pregnancy, teenage pregnancy prevention, HIV prevention. Yeah. So they focus on that all around in Georgia, right? So I started out as Jane's accountant, right? And then I started working with GCAP as their accountant, their operations, because at this point COVID was hitting and they were starting to work remotely. So I ended up being their accountant, and that they needed an operations manager to keep everything intact for remote working, So I was I became the operations manager as well. And then I started doing their events. And then, so they do have 2 events that I produce every year. It's the Rising Leaders Luncheon, which you just posted that. I saw that last year we had Killer Mike. That was our first year. This year we had Larenz Tate. And then I produced their Empower After Party, which is in November. So that's their huge fundraiser where they raise over $1 million. And we've had Gladys Knight, we've had Tyler Perry, we've had Wanda Sykes. So I produced these shows. We brought in Jermaine Dupri last year as the DJ.
I got that picture of you and Jermaine.
Yes.
Look at that. Yes. Just talking to him like he's just your old friend.
Yes. And these people have become, because I work with them so much now, they become friends, right? I'm so grateful. That's the thing about Atlanta. Like when I came, I was this little fish in this big pond. But you have people like Jermaine and Jermaine's team, right? Because I can't forget about his team. But you have people like him. You have people like Larenz Tate and his team. You have people like Jane Fonda and her team that really embraced me, and came into situations where I needed them to gain my rapport, right? To gain my to elevate my business, right?
Yes.
I needed them, so they agreed, sometimes no cost, right? And come in and curate this experience that they know will also serves its purpose for the event, but it also helps to elevate my brand and my business. Wow. So I'm so grateful for that. Like Big Tigger has done that numerous occasions.
And I just saw this picture right here.
Yes, that's at the BET Awards.
You at the BET Awards.
Yes. Yeah.
James, I tell you what, first off, this conversation could go forever, and it kind of took a path of its own. I didn't know all of this about you, and how inspiring to know that you were on the brink and you asked God to be who he is, and you specifically told him what you wanted. And now here you are living your wildest dreams.
Yes.
James, what would you say to that person that is there and that's waiting for their purpose to really start moving and living their whole and best life, and they feel like it hadn't happened yet? What would you say to that person that is where you were, 2012?
Yeah. So I would say, this is saying, I'll say, pray and believe.
Yes.
Right? Because I think we pray at a formation. A lot of times we pray because that's the thing that we know to do. And that's the thing that's been instilled in us, right? But I think the part that is forfeited a lot, and I don't even think people, even Christians, right? Even people who grew up in church, I think we leave out the believing part, right? So you have to pray and believe in what you're praying for. Like,
come on.
And believing means putting in the work, right?
Come on.
And putting in the work means sometimes just being patient.
Yeah.
Putting in the work can mean getting up off your tail and doing your part and doing what you have to do to make make it manifest. But you have to pray and believe and trust. I put all of my trust in God.
Come on.
All of it. Like nothing is unimaginable to me now. Like I put my full 100% all my trust in God, no matter what it is, right? In illness, in finances, in work, in relationships. I choose to put all my trust in God, and it has worked. And it has worked for me. I've seen it work. I've seen them do it. And I would just say, keep going, keep holding on. And sometimes, Krystal, a really quick 30 seconds, it will get worse before it gets better. 2018, again, I was having a rough time. Not as rough as 2012, but just some poor financial decisions I made, some things that didn't pop off how I thought they would. And I was in a financial, bind. And I just moved to Atlanta. Like, I've been in Atlanta 2 or 3 years. I was thinking about going back home. I was struggling. But still still taking pictures with celebrities, still everywhere all around the world, still flying out. But I was really, really struggling.
Yeah.
And I was in Chicago, and Mark and Michael Lacey's dad, Lavelle Lacey's funeral.
Yes.
Our birthdays are the same day. So it was, me, Tate, all of us, we went to Lavelle's funeral. And I was standing I remember I was ironing my clothes, and I said, it was I think July or August. And I said, God, here we are again. I'm like, things have got to get better. When things will get better? And God spoke to me and said, brace yourself, because things are going to get worse before they get better. And I think Lavelle died in maybe August. In October, my mom passed.
Oh,
totally unexpectedly. Wasn't sick. And we wasn't like none of that. Went into the hospital for a small procedure, caught an infection, died. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
But I remember that clearly. standing at the ironing board earning like, and it again, this is where the trusting and believing, because then when you believe and you trust, like God will speak to you, right? You will hear from him. It may not be what you want to hear.
That's right.
But he will speak, because that day he specifically said to me, brace yourself, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. And then my mom died. And I think because at that moment when God told me to brace myself, of course you're never prepared for that. And that wasn't even on our radar, because my mom wasn't sick or anything. It was totally but when it happened, it took me back to that. So that's how I was able to cope, right?
Yeah.
That's how I was able to cope and get through and plan my mom's funeral and not lose my mind, because God had already told me
had already warned you.
Already said, brace yourself. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was illness. I didn't know what it could have been, but he literally said brace myself. So I trust wholeheartedly in God. I try my best to align with his will, because it always turns out better than what I got planned. You know,
I love that. I don't know about y'all, but this man has blessed me, and I totally didn't expect it, but so much power and truly, living it out, right? That seed that was planted as a church boy is allowing you to continue to move forward and be an example to other people. Like, hey, this is what I've been through. This is where I'm at right now. But my secret weapon is what? My faith in God. So before we get out of here, though, there is something that I like to call, we do rapid fire. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, quick fire. And so I want you to say the first answer that comes to your mind. All right.
Okay.
Sweet tea or hot toddy?
Sweet tea.
All right. Most savage thing you've ever said and you didn't feel bad about?
Ooh, shit.
Do we need to circle back to that one?
Yeah, because I said a lot of stuff.
Okay. And then I guess it's the same thing, a social media post that went left, but you stood firm on that. Can you think of anything you ever posted and it kind of went left and you like, you know what, I don't care. I'm standing 10 toes down on what I said. I said what I said. Yeah,
probably recently I posted about the whole BET Awards with the with Glow and Kirk Franklin being
Glorilla, winning
best gospel. Upset about that, and I gave my perspective of why I thought it was what it was.
And if y'all curious what it was, go ahead and find his social media page to read what it was. What's a gospel song that gets you together every single time?
I think "Turning Around for Me" by Bashan Mitchell.
That's a favorite.
Bashan is a monster with the pen.
Come on now.
We talk on him all the time. I saw him at LA a couple weeks ago, and we was like, "Boy, you can't sing worth crap." But Bashan with that pen is a monster. So turn around.
Hey, Bashan, if you're watching, my sister cited that was her song that got her through her journey as well. And that song ministered to me on many days, turning around for me. One thing ATL will never beat Louisville at. What is one thing Atlanta will never beat Louisville
at? Throwing them hands. I tell people in Atlanta all the time. If y'all were in my city, y'all would not get away with some of that stuff that y'all got away. Somebody would be at y'all's neck. So if I had to go to a brawl or a fight, I'm taking my Louisville folks.
Oh my, because they could throw some hands.
Right.
That is hilarious. Last thing, what's something you will never apologize for?
Being my authentic self.
Being
my authentic self. I work very hard and I'm very intentional. I worked very hard because now they're just natural.
Wow. And guess what? That's why we all love you, because you are who you are. James, thank you so much for spending time with us. And I'll just end it by saying, from Louisville to Atlanta, from Live Nation to Larenz Tate, from Petty Post to purpose-filled platforms, James McCAULEY is the voice you can't ignore, slick with the mouth, rich with the humor, and grounded in real life faith. In this episode of Kandid Konversations, we talk purpose, promotion, popping it off. But guess what? We're ending on a high note, saying that with God, all things are possible.
All things are possible.
And guess what? You got to be who you are, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, James, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers as well. Thank you so much, Krystal.
All right. Until next time. Bye.